Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Melanin Margin, the weekly chat show where conversations about race are never off the table. We're your hosts, Quaviondre Williams.
And Daquon Wilson.
So let's get into this week's conversation. What's hot on the table this week?
So recently, the U.S. Senate passed a bill to award Emmett Till and his mother, Mamie Till Mobley, the Congressional Gold Award, which is Congress's, quote, highest expression of national appreciation for distinguished achievements and contributions by individuals or institutions, end quote. This comes nearly 60 years after Till's horrendous murder by white supremacists, his open casket funeral, and just under 20 years after civil rights activist Till Mobley's death. The bill co sponsors Senators Cory Booker of New Jersey and Richard Burr of North Carolina consider it to be, quote, long overdue recognition, end quote. However, some are not as optimistic. As MSNBC contributor Jahan Jones writes, quote, it seems like a hollow gesture for the two to receive medals from an institution that's been unable to pass an anti-lynching law. I'm
Mhm.
wary of performative gestures of anti-racism being used when substantive options are available, end quote. So I wanted to ask you, Andre, do you think the passage of the award is emblematic of racial progress in this country? Or do you think it's just performative?
Honestly, I think it is very performative for me. It's there
It's
are
going to be
so
performative for me. It's the performative for me.
It's the performative for me. There are so many problems with this whole congressional award. First and foremost, how are you going to sit here and say, "Oh yeah, we'll give you this award that recognizes all of your achievements and such," but still leave the very bill on the floor that was the whole reason for the journey that she had to take, that she was forced to take because her son was murdered. And it's very problematic because it almost feels like we're skipping to the end versus actually going through the journey to get there, you know?
Right.
Because we all understand how horrible it is that we still have bills and policies in place that still reinforce white supremacist values. And this particular bill, an anti lynching bill, is still being discussed and debated against as if a life being murdered is anything but a problem. That a life being taken due to the hate of someone's race is anything but something that needs to be taken immediately.
Right.
Action. And I think that it's very frustrating to me because I can only imagine how she feels. Is like y'all are giving me sort of a placating award to say, well, even though we can't do what you actually want us to do, we're going to give you an award to say, we're sorry. I'm so sorry that you lost your son to some incredibly horrendous racial violence. And I know that you want this bill passed that will stop what happened to your son ever happening again, or will at least put things in place to make sure that the people who do participate in that activity get the the justice that they deserve, or the get taken to get the punishment they deserve. Let me clarify that. And for the people
Right.
that they murdered, get the justice they deserve, because nothing can replace her son. Nothing can excuse or explain such horrendous crimes. But at the very least, having the government on your side to say, listen, if this ever happens again, we will make sure that we persecute these people to the fullest extent of the law and give you some form of justice in this horrendous death.
Yeah. And I completely agree. I think that it's one of these things where Emmett Till's lynching was like 60 years ago. And uh Till Mobley's death was 20 years ago. So you're telling me that it takes 60 years for Congress to do something about it? and Mobley's death was 20 years ago. It takes 20 years for Congress to give her some recognition. And it's one of these things that's entirely frustrating because I think it is performative. Because I like the analogy you had before of just like it's kind of getting ahead of ourselves. Right now, we are having the reception before the actual event has even occurred. Like the
Mm,
event would be that action of getting a law on the books and being able to enforce said law. That is the
exactly.
event that we need before we can have this reception where we're giving out awards. And I think that it's incredibly performative, especially considering that, if we're being honest, both of these people are dead. Both of these people will never be able to receive this award in person. They would never be able to, have speaking engagements across the
Exactly.
United States to really talk about why I got this award and what it really means. And let's be honest, Congress is not going to do that. Congress is not going to really speak to the masses about why it's so important that we deal with America's horrendous history when it comes to lynchings. Because this is all well and good, but the people who really need to hear this message, the people who really need to that slap in the face to be like lynching is wrong, they're not going to read some congressional award on a website by Congress. Like, no, they could care less about going to congress.gov or whatever the website is, figuring out who this person is, why they got this award. And in general, I think that we need to stop rewarding Black death. Like
Mm,
it's frustrating because, like the award says, it is this achievement. It is for this achievement and contribution to society. And I think that it creates this negative that one of the highest, contributions or achievement a Black person can do is die horrendously and have the world talking about them. That is an incredibly insidious narrative to be perpetuating.
I fully agree, and and it slipped my mind that when you spoke about it earlier, but yeah, she's passed away. So that honestly makes this even more heinous in my opinion, because it's like not only is she gone and her son is gone, but to honor their memory, you give them some consolation prize. Because let's
Right.
be honest, that's what it is. Like you said, many people won't really actually look up the Congressional Award. I didn't even know that was a thing until we did the research about this episode. So it's really to me it's crazy to me that the government, especially when we talk about this conversation, I can't help but think about reparations and the things that have gone on in history that we still haven't gotten like a formal correct apology for the things that have gone on. And I think it's crazy to me that in 2022 this is even a debate. In 2022, a bill being passed that protects Black lives or POC lives is even up for discussion, even up for, and even something that can be like, oh well, maybe that might not be the best, or maybe this might be the whatever. The fact that we're having a debate about it, the fact that it's still on the congressional floor, is not even being looked at, or people are pushing it down to not try to talk about it. It's like, just because you don't talk about a horrendous event or a horrendous part of American history does not mean that it did not happen. And we're
Right.
getting a lot of that kind of, it feels almost as if it's erasure, because this award
Mhm.
feels like it's placating the tragedy. It's saying, look at this award. Look, they achieved something, right? That's something. It's something, but it's not the actual action in place. And me and Daquon have talked about this before on Apology Plus Action. And it's one thing to say, I'm sorry, X, Y, and Z happened. It's another thing to actually put things in place to ensure that that thing does not happen again under no circumstances. And it's very unfortunate that even in her death and even in her son's tragic death, there was still no true justice served.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's heartbreaking to think about that. Is that she died, yes, And I believe that Emmett Till's accuser is still alive, correct? I think she
I
is.
believe so. Yeah.
And the fact that she's still alive, the fact that Emmett Till's mother went through her whole life never getting to see the justice that she deserved for her son's death, sought out or given. It's so heartbreaking. And this to me is just almost like salt in the wounds. It's like
Right.
instead of actually taking the time to ensure that this horrendous death will never happen to any other Black child again, or if it does happen again, that their accusers, that the justice will be served. There will be no doubt about it because it's on the books. And a lot of people don't understand this too. But everything that the government does, everything that laws do, reflect in society. It ripples. It's a ripple effect. And so when the government shows that they don't want to discuss a thing like lynching or racism, when they talk about it as if it doesn't exist or it happened way, way, way back when, that ripples throughout society. And so when you see that the anti-lynching bill is still on the floor, it's still not being discussed, it's still not being talked about, all that does is ripples through society, because now white people will be looking at this and being like, yeah, the government doesn't care about it, so why should I?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense, Daquon?
Yeah, and I think that it really gets at this bigger picture of American politics are just a performance. It's one huge performance when you just look at it, whether it's Congress, taking a knee and having kente cloth on when during the Black Lives Matter movements, all of the protests and things going on during the summer of the pandemic, whether it's, even thinking about the voting rights legislation that's been trying and trying to be passed over and over again, but not happening, because you think about something like lynching, which should just be, all right, lynching bad, like everybody should have that understood, but we can't pass a bill about it. Having Americans have the right to vote should just be like, all right, people should be able to vote, but we still have so much trouble. And we see all of these different performances time and time again. And I think now we're really getting tired of it. I remember recently seeing from the descendants of Martin Luther King Jr., they were talking about, like, we're not going to do this whole performance celebrating for MLK Day because, MLK fought for civil rights. MLK fought for voting rights. And there is voting rights legislation that's like not being passed right now. So how can we celebrate this man while just like ignoring what he really fought for?
What he
How
stood
can we
for.
yeah, how can we celebrate Emmett Till and Till Mobley without, honoring what they fought for? So it's really just this performative gesture. Like you said before, there's no action behind it. It's like being like, all right, we're sorry this happened, but like, let's move on. And it's like, no, give us that action. How are you going to pay reparations for this? What type of justice are you going to provide, rather than just giving that apology, being like, we're so sorry? Like, that's not going to do anything for us. And we are tired of having to just ask for breadcrumbs. And they'll give us,
Yeah.
like, all right, here's Juneteenth as a holiday. We're good. Here's this award. We're good. No, we want action. We want things on the book, and not only just on the book, we need those things enforced.
Exactly. And that's the biggest problem, is that there's not action and there's not enforcement. And like I said before, and to reiterate, just because you don't discuss something doesn't mean it's not happening. Just because this makes you uncomfortable does not mean that it's not a problem. And I think that when it comes to this kind of situation with the Till Mobley and the award, it just again feels like America's way of saying, oops,